Hello, and welcome to Under 1000. My name's Thomas Flower, and each episode I'll read you a new piece of flash fiction. All of the stories are 1000 words or less. Today, I'll be reading Internet Idol. That picture. It had just popped up in her feed, almost as though it had come from the very ether itself. Now she sat and stared at it, trying to work out what it was she was feeling. Nostalgia. Well, yes, that would be the simple way of explaining things. But it was something more than that. Eilidh remembered that face so clearly, as though it was burnt into some part of her brain she didn't even realize she still had access to anymore. Who was this woman staring back at her from her own past? She couldn't remember her name, but she somehow dredged up Venom Queen 98. A username, of course. Now she knew exactly which part of her past this person was from. Back then, that site had seemed like it was the most important thing in the world. She remembered the hours and hours she had spent on it as a teenager, logging on almost ritualistically every day to talk with friends and search out inspiration and new people. She had been obsessed, she realized, as she looked back on it. And this girl, whatever her real name was, she'd been on there too. Well, that was an understatement really, Eilidh considered. Venom Queen wasn't just on the site, she was the entirety of the site for so many people. Her popularity had come to define a significant part of the experience for a very specific audience and subculture which had congregated there. Of course, with hindsight, Eilidh could recognize that the following Venom had wasn't as all-encompassing as she had thought at the time. But for those who had once belonged to a certain clique, a small, specific echo chamber, she had been everything. Eilidh even remembered the few times she had spoken with Venom, or interacted with her indirectly on the site. The time when she commented on a picture that Eilidh had been in, the time when she had liked a post Eilidh had made, and that one very rare time when they had briefly exchanged messages back and forth. Back then, Eilidh was blown away by it, unable to believe that this internet deity was interested in her. Now, though, she realized how silly and superficial these interactions had been, how small and meaningless. And yet, she still couldn't help but feel proud that she had once been one of the girls in Venom's circle of acquaintances, even if she had only ever been at the outer edge. Of course, the website was gone by now. Its popularity had waned many, many years ago, and it had long shut down. It was basically prehistoric by the standards of the internet, but Eilidh still wished that she could somehow go back and relive those memories and experiences, even if only in the preserved, lifeless husk of an archive of pictures and comments. Unfortunately, there was simply no way. It was unavailable to her, or anyone, anymore. When the site was taken down, all that had been scrubbed from the world, as though it had never happened, except for those who had lived through it. The occasional reminder, from clickbait articles and videos, was the only thing that supported it not being a delusion entirely. It was hardly a loss, really, to lose a trove of teenage musings and insecurities. And yet, somehow, Eilidh felt it as one now. Despite the unimportance of it all, she deeply wished she could go peer in on her younger self, if only for a short while. Still, that part of her life was not lost, or at least, not entirely. It lived on in this little throwback JPEG, an image from another time. And, as Eilidh thought about it, she realised that Venom Queen, whatever her real name was, must still be out there. Perhaps this part of her life lived on in that way too. Curious now, Eilidh wondered whether she might be able to find out what had happened to the woman she had spent all this time thinking about and reminiscing over. She wondered if she still kept any kind of online presence. Surely there must be something, even if it wasn't likely to be the same as it had been when they were both young. Opening a new tab in her browser, she began to frantically search for the terms which might help her arrive at her intended destination. She tried Venom Queen, but that pulled up too many unrelated fantasy stories and articles about spiders. She thought searching for the website as well might help, but all that got her were nostalgic musings from 30-somethings that were in the same boat as her. She tried desperately to see whether she could conjure up any other details which would lead her to her desired destination, but she struggled to. Where had Venom lived? What was she really called? How old was she? What had she been studying, working towards, dreaming of one day being? Eilidh had no answers. The reality was that she simply didn't know Venom at all. Although she had taken the role of an interested hanger-on when she was young, a sort of lopsided friendship from her perspective, the truth was that Venom was a minor public figure who had now slipped out of the public view. And Eilidh was sure that Venom wouldn't be thinking of her, reminiscing and wondering where she'd ended up in the same way. It was strange to have been so invested in this person, and to now realise that you knew nothing about them or what happened to them. But Eilidh had to accept it. There was no other option. Sighing, she picked up her phone and scrolled till she reached a name she knew far better. She needed to speak to her real friends, the ones who had actually been there with her. Venom Queen 98 would have to remain a mysterious memory. Thank you for listening to Under 1000. I'm your host, Thomas Flower. To follow the show online, look for Under 1000 Pod on Twitter or Facebook, or check out the website at under1000pod.com. If you'd like to support the show on Patreon, go to patreon.com/under1000pod, where you can sign up to read each month's stories in advance, as well as to have a thank you be read during these credits. The theme music is an instrumental version of In Between Days by Nick Tate and the Sharks. To hear the full song and more from the same EP, go to Nick Tate, NICTATE, and thesharks.bandcamp.com, or search for them on your favourite streaming platform. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and that you'll join me again next time for some more super short fiction.